Welcome back to Grandma's Sunday dinner table, where every meal comes with a side of wisdom and a whole lot of laughter. We've been sharing the stories that Grandma used to tell when the whole family gathered on Sunday afternoons. Stories that taught us lessons about life, love, family, and what happens when you think you're smarter than your elders. 2 weeks ago, we told you about Grandpa trying to sneak out to see the temptation. Last week, you heard about Uncle Junior and the $50 rooster incident. This week's story is one that Grandma told with particular glee, usually when us grandkids were sitting around the table looking a little too pleased with ourselves, thinking we were getting away with something. She'd get this knowing smile on her face, lean back in her chair, and say, "Y'all think you're slick? Let me tell you about the time some of my grandchildren thought they could outrun my switch." And we'd all freeze because we knew, some of us from personal experience, that even though Grandma couldn't catch us when we ran, her revenge for making her chase us was always way worse than any switching would have been. This is the story of the Great Switch Chase of 1985 and what happened to me and my cousins when we learned the hard way that you don't make your grandmother run. Before we get into the specifics of what went down that summer day in 1985, let me set the scene for you. Grandma's house was the central gathering place for the entire extended family. Aunts, uncles, cousins, neighbors who were basically family. Everybody came through Grandma's house on a regular basis. In the summer, when school was out, parents would drop their kids off at Grandma's house for the day while they went to work, which meant Grandma was often watching anywhere from 5 to 10 grandchildren at once, ranging in age from toddlers to teenagers. Now, Grandma was in her 60s by 1985, not a young woman anymore, but don't let that fool you. She was still strong, still sharp, still very much in control of her household. She had rules, and those rules were non-negotiable. No running in the house, no talking back, no fighting with your cousins, do your chores when she told you to, eat what she cooked without complaining, and most importantly, when she called you, you came immediately, not in a minute, not after you finished what you were doing, but right then and there. And the punishment for breaking these rules was usually the switch, a thin, flexible branch from the willow tree in the backyard that Grandma would send you to fetch yourself if you'd done something wrong. And there was an art to choosing your own switch. Too small, and Grandma would send you back for a bigger one. Too big, and well, you were just making it worse for yourself. You wanted something medium-sized, flexible but not too bendy, long enough that Grandma didn't have to bend too far to reach your legs, but not so long that she could really get some power behind it. Most of us had been on the receiving end of Grandma's switch at some point, and while it hurt, it wasn't the worst punishment in the world. A few swats on the legs, some tears, and then it was over and you were forgiven. What we didn't know until that day in 1985 was that Grandma had a backup plan for grandchildren who thought they could outrun the switch. It was a Saturday in July, Grandma would begin, settling into the story with that mischievous glint in her eye that meant this was going to be good. Hot as blazes outside, one of those days where even the shade didn't help much. I had 6 of y'all at the house that day. My daughter's 3 kids, my son's 2 kids, and 1 extra from down the street who might as well have been mine for as much time as he spent at my house. She'd look around the table, sometimes pointing at the people who'd been there that day if they were present for the storytelling. Y'all had been good all morning, playing in the yard, staying out of trouble, and I thought to myself, this is nice. They're finally learning how to act right. Should have known better than to think that, because the minute I let my guard down, that's when the trouble started. The way Grandma told it, she called us in for lunch around noon. Sandwiches and chips, nothing fancy. just something to fill our bellies so we could go back outside and play. But we were in the middle of an intense game of hide and seek, and when she called us, we didn't come. She called again, louder this time, and still nothing. She came to the back door and yelled for us to get inside right now, and we had the nerve, the absolute audacity to yell back, "In a minute," Grandma would repeat, her voice rising with remembered indignation. These children told me in my house that they'd come in a minute. I was asking instead of telling. Oh, I saw red. I marched myself to that willow tree, broke off the biggest switch I could find, and came back to that door ready to teach y'all about respect and obedience. This is where the story got funny because anyone who'd been there that day knew what happened next. I came out that back door with my switch in hand and I said in my most serious voice, "Y'all got about 3 seconds to get in this house before I come out there and get you myself. And do you know what these fools did?" She'd pause here for dramatic effect, looking around the table with mock outrage on her face. They looked at each other, looked at me, looked at that switch, and then they took off running in 6 different directions like roaches when you turn on the kitchen light. The table would erupt in laughter at this image. 6 kids scattering across the yard while Grandma stood there with her switch, probably more stunned than angry at first that we dared to run. Now I'm standing there thinking, did these children just run from me? Did they really just run from their grandmother? And I was so mad I started chasing after the closest one, who I think was you. She'd point at whoever had been the unfortunate soul closest to her. And I'm running across this yard in the hot sun, switch in hand, yelling, "You better stop running right now." But this child is fast. And I'm 60-something years old, and after about 30 seconds, I realized I am not catching nobody. So I stopped, put my hand on my hip, and watched all 6 of y'all peeking at me from behind trees and around the corner of the house, thinking you were so slick. This was the turning point in the story. The moment when Grandma's strategy shifted from direct confrontation to something much more devious. I stood there breathing hard, getting hotter and madder by the second, and I said out loud, loud enough for all of y'all to hear, Okay, y'all want to run from me? Y'all think you're fast? Fine, but let me tell you something. I might not be able to catch you, but I control something you need. And when you get hungry later, when you get thirsty, when you need to use the bathroom, or you get tired of being outside in this heat, you're going to have to come back in this house, and I'm going to be waiting. The way Grandma described the looks on our faces when we realized what she was saying always got laughs, because you could see us doing the calculations. How long could we stay outside? How thirsty would we get? What if we really needed to pee? Then I walked back in the house, locked that back door, went to the front door, and locked that too. And I sat down in my chair right by the window where I could see the whole yard, and I waited. Grandma would take a sip of her drink here, drawing out the suspense, even though everyone knew how the story ended. Y'all thought I was bluffing at first. You came back to playing, kept an eye on the house, but figured I'd cool down and call you in eventually. But an hour passed, then 2 hours, and that sun was getting hotter and higher. No shade, no water, no bathroom, and I could see y'all starting to get uncomfortable. The details Grandma remembered about this part were incredible. Who started complaining first, always the youngest one. Who tried to act tough and unbothered, usually one of the boys. Who started crying because they needed to use the bathroom, multiple kids. After about 3 hours, one of you, I think it was the baby, the 5-year-old who'd gotten dragged into this mess by following the older kids, came and knocked on the back door. Timid little knock, trying to be quiet about it. And I went to the door and said through the screen, "What do you want?" And this child said, "Grandma, I need to come in. I'm hot." And I said, "Oh, are you ready to get your switching now?" And that baby's eyes got real big and they ran away from the door. The table would be roaring with laughter at this point because everyone could picture tiny 5-year-old whoever it was, face all sweaty and scared, having to make the choice between being hot and getting switched. So the baby went back to the group and reported that I was serious. I was really not letting anybody in without consequences. And I watched y'all have what looked like a very serious discussion about what to do. Some of y'all wanted to just take the switching and get it over with. Some of y'all were still trying to act tough. You could stay out there all day. But after another hour, when it was coming up on 4 o'clock and y'all hadn't eaten since breakfast, nature was calling and that sun was beating down, y'all started to crack. Grandma would describe each kid's surrender individually, savoring every detail. The first one to give up completely was, let me remember. Yeah, it was my son's oldest boy. He came to the door, knocked properly this time, and said, "Grandma, I'm sorry. I should have come when you called. Can I please come in?" And I said, "Are you ready to accept your punishment?" And he said, "Yes, ma'am." So I opened that door and let him in. This is where Grandma's revenge got really creative. But here's the thing, I didn't switch him. I looked at him, saw how hot and tired and sorry he was, and I said, "Go wash your hands and sit at the table." And this child was confused but also relieved, and he did what I said. Then I fixed him a nice cold glass of sweet tea and a plate of leftovers from lunch. And I let him eat while the other 5 of y'all were still outside watching through the window. The genius of this move always made people at the table shake their heads in admiration. Grandma had figured out that the switching wasn't even necessary. Making the other kids watch one of their own get to come inside, get a cold drink, get food was punishment enough. One by one, over the next hour, the rest of y'all came slinking back to the door. Each time, same question, "Are you ready to accept your punishment?" And each time, "Yes, ma'am." And each time I let that child in, gave them water and food, and made them sit at the table. No switching, no yelling, just the natural consequences of your choices. You were hot, thirsty, hungry, and uncomfortable because you ran from me, and now you had to come back on my terms. But the story wasn't quite over because Grandma always had one more twist. After all 6 of y'all were inside, cleaned up, fed, and feeling better, I sat y'all down in the living room and I said, "Let me explain something to you. When I call you, you come. Not because I'm mean, not because I like to boss you around, but because I'm trying to take care of you. I called you for lunch because you needed to eat. I needed you to come in so I knew where you were and that you were safe. When you ignored me and then ran from me, you weren't just being disobedient. You were telling me that your game was more important than my concern for you, and that's disrespectful." The mood would shift here as Grandma moved from the funny part of the story to the lesson. "I told y'all I didn't switch any of you today because you punished yourselves. You spent 3-4 hours outside in the heat with no water, no food, no bathroom, all because you didn't want to take 30 seconds to come inside when I called. That's what we call natural consequences. You made a choice, and that choice had results, and you had to live with those results until you were ready to make a better choice." She'd look around the table at the younger generation listening to this story. "But I also told them, don't think I won't catch you next time. Don't think that just because I'm getting older, you can run from me and there won't be consequences. Because the thing about being a grandmother is I don't have to catch you. I just have to be patient. You'll always come back eventually because I have what you need: food, water, shelter, love. And when you come back, we'll deal with whatever needs to be dealt with." This was the wisdom at the heart of the story. The reason Grandma told it over and over, not just because it was funny, though it certainly was, but because it taught an important lesson about authority, consequences, and the futility of running from people who have your best interests at heart. After that day, Grandma would conclude, not a single one of those children ever ran from me again. When I called, they came. When I sent somebody to get their switch, they went and got it without complaint, because they learned that running just made things harder on themselves, that I was patient enough to wait them out, and that my punishments, whether it was the switch or just letting them suffer the consequences of their own choices, were always fair and always for their own good. She'd smile then, a satisfied smile that said she knew she'd won that battle without even having to chase anybody. And the funny thing is, 30-something years later, those kids who ran from me that day, they're parents now, and they tell me their own children have tried to run from them, and now they understand what I was doing. They understand that discipline isn't about being mean or about catching the fastest kid. It's about being consistent, being patient, and making sure children understand that their choices have consequences, good or bad. The adults at the table who'd been there that day would nod, maybe laughing at the memory, but also acknowledging the truth in what Grandma was saying. So, when your kids try to run from you, when they test your authority, when they think they're smarter or faster than you, remember this story. You don't have to catch them. You just have to control what they need and wait for them to figure out that running doesn't solve anything. They'll always come back. Because that's what family does. We come back to each other even after we mess up, even after we run, because we need each other more than we need to be right or to win. This last part always hit different when you were older and understood it better. When we were kids hearing this story, we laughed at the image of Grandma chasing kids around the yard and then locking them out. But as adults, we understood the deeper meaning. That love sometimes means letting people suffer the natural consequences of their choices. That wisdom is knowing when to punish and when to just wait. That authority is most powerful when it's exercised with patience rather than force. The Great Switch Chase of 1985 became a legendary story in our family, told and retold at every gathering, with different people adding details they remember or disputing exactly how long we were outside or who caved first. But the core of the story remained the same, and the lesson was always clear. Don't run from Grandma because Grandma doesn't need to catch you to win. And you know what? That lesson extended beyond just running from physical punishment. It became a metaphor for how we approach problems in our lives. When we were facing consequences for something we'd done wrong, we learned not to run from responsibility, but to face it head on and get it over with. When we were dealing with difficult situations, we learned that avoiding them just made them worse, that we'd eventually have to come back and deal with whatever we'd been running from. Grandma taught us that running might give you a temporary feeling of freedom or escape, but it doesn't solve anything. The problem is still there when you stop running, and now you're tired and thirsty, and you've made things worse by trying to avoid what needed to be dealt with. Better to face it, accept the consequences, learn the lesson, and move forward. As we grew up and had our own children, many of us found ourselves in similar situations. Kids who didn't come when called, kids who thought they could outrun or outsmart us, kids who needed to learn about natural consequences. And when those moments came, we'd remember Grandma standing in that yard, switch in hand, making the choice to go inside and wait rather than chase. We'd remember how effective it was, how the natural consequences of being hot and hungry and uncomfortable taught us better than any switching could have. And we'd tell our own children the story of the Great Switch Chase, keeping Grandma's wisdom alive for another generation, making sure they understood that trying to run from authority or responsibility never works out the way you think it will, and that the people who love you most are the ones who wait patiently for you to figure that out and come back home. Did your grandmother ever chase you with a switch? Did you ever try to run from your grandparents and live to regret it? What creative punishments did the elders in your family come up with when physical discipline didn't work? Share your stories in the comments below. We want to hear about the creative ways your family taught you not to run. And don't forget to subscribe, because next week we're sharing the story about the time Grandma caught us stealing cookies from her kitchen and what she did instead of telling our mama. Trust me, you're going to want to hear this one. Hit that subscribe button and we'll see you next Sunday at Grandma's table.